Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Road to Avengers Doomsday, and today's film is X2, which actually has like 3 different variants of titles. It's X2, but it was marketed as X2, X-Men United, and then in like international terms, it was X-Men 2, the movie. I don't know, X2, I think X2 is kind of like a dumb title on its own. It really should have just been called X-Men 2, or X-Men 2 United. Maybe that would have been a better title. I don't know. But regardless, we got a little bit to get into here because there's a lot of good to talk about this sequel to X-Men. So like I said in my X-Men review, it was kind of early stages, beginning, a lot of setup. And like I said in the X-Men review, it's very difficult to try to get a lot of stuff into an X-Men movie because there's just so much to pull from. Like I said, there's so many characters, there's so many plot lines you could do, and there's so much variety to what you could do with the story. But obviously, we still have some limitations to what we're allowed to get away with. Obviously, the studio is still kind of iffy with the more cosmic-y stuff, the more Marvel comic stuff. But David Hayter, the guy who wrote the first movie, who I didn't mention in the first review, who's the voice of Solid Snake, by the way, in case you didn't know, he got some much-needed help from Dan Harris and Michael Daughtry. They definitely added like a much needed boost to a lot of the stuff that was in the first X movie. Because the first X movie has like, I don't want to say like, not like a lot of kick to it, but it's not very memorable overall. Like when I look back at, like, if we're going to compare these two movies, X-Men 2 is obviously loads better than X-Men 1, just because like there's better setup for action scenes, there's better punchlines, there's better jokes. It just feels a lot more like they were able to have fun. They didn't have to take it all too seriously, but they still had to play by the rules of, being somewhat grounded. So they continue where we basically left off. Everybody's kind of moved on from Magneto being in jail. Logan's off trying to find his origin. It doesn't work out, so he goes back to the mansion. But while that's going on, the new focus of this film is a human villain in the form of Brian Cox's William Stryker, who is just awesome. Like he's meant for this role. He just really digs into it. And I honestly don't think, like, going forward, anybody who played Stryker again in the prequels and the movies that followed, nobody hit it the way he hit it. I know that he is from the comics. I know he's like a desperate, like crazy person who wants to kill all mutants and get rid of them and stuff. And he has his son Jason and all that stuff. But the way they went about it in this movie, giving him sort of the, I wouldn't say tragic backstory, but the complicated, very disturbing backstory involving his son and his family and why he hates them, and it's all just superseded very nicely in there. And then his plan for what he wants to do is very well done, which it does of course lead the X-Men to having to team up with Magneto and the Brotherhood, which does happen quite a bit in the comics. There's usually always another villain who's out there, usually another big villain, another mutant villain, essentially. But we're never getting that, basically, at this point. Stryker is the best we get in terms of a villain, aside from Magneto. And even then, the film can't completely let us slip by with just Stryker. Of course, Magneto's got a Magneto by the end of the film, but that's, understandable. Real quick to throw it in now, because I don't know when I'll throw it in, but basically, Magneto's Brotherhood kind of got shafted in this movie. He's kind of down to just Mystique in this one, because Sabretooth and Toad are just missing. Like, they never explain what happened to them. They never talk about them again, and they're never seen again. Like, I don't know. And he didn't have anybody else on, I guess, in backup. There's a few new characters in this movie. Obviously, Nightcrawler is a big one. He's pretty important to the main story, and they do a good job of connecting him with Storm to give her more stuff. Jean's got stuff involving her latent psychic powers, which I don't know why. They basically say that something happened at the end of the first movie that's kind of like turned off her telepathy, but nothing really was illustrated in the last movie on that. You just kind of have to go with it. And of course, they're setting up Phoenix stuff, which obviously, if at the time when I first watched this, I didn't know that there was, the Phoenix story and that Jean Grey comes back, or not that she dies, but that she has sort of an alter ego as the Phoenix. But it's very clear that they're not doing the comic version where it's a space entity or something. Although, to be very honest, they could have very easily in the next movie BS'd some stuff and said that, the X-Men went into space at some point before the first movie, where Jean got affected by this thing. It went inside of her, and Xavier kind of blocked it and stuff. So they could have done it if they wanted to, but we'll talk more about that when we get to the next movie. So she's got that. Wolverine's got his backstory with Stryker, which is great because that keeps it center. Rogue kind of gets thrown to the wayside. She kind of gets roped in with Bobby, who only was sort of like a cameo in the last movie. He's more of important now because they kind of talk about like how he left his family and what his family thinks about him being a mutant and stuff, so they went that angle with it. Then we also have Aaron Stratford, who's playing Pyro this time, and his they're kind of like one little group of the plot. They're not majority wise, but there's definitely a lot more with all that, like I said. And like with the New Mutants, we've got Nightcrawler, and really the only other New Mutant we have is Lady Deathstrike, played by Kelly Hu, and she's kind of wasted. She doesn't say more than like maybe 2 lines. There's nothing about her backstory. If you're hoping for anything remotely close to her comic persona, the best you're getting is that she's got the long nails, and that's basically the extent of what we get with her. It's a shame too. I really would have liked them to do more with that. There were theories that maybe she survived the movie even with the adamantium pumped into her, but it never happened. So that was kind of disappointing. And unfortunately, poor Cyclops gets shafted in the worst way possible. He basically pops up at the beginning. He does his usual stay away from Jean shtick that he did in the last movie. And then he's basically off screen for half of it because he gets possessed, or not possessed, but taken over by Stryker's like control unit thing. And he's off screen. And then he comes back for a little bit, and he basically is there just to cry over Jean dying in the ending. And that's just poor Cyclops. I'm so glad he's getting some good representation, hopefully, in Doomsday. We're already seeing some good stuff. Hopefully it's not just the one scene. But like I said, there's a lot to like about this. There's a lot more meat, I think, and a lot more funny moments, a lot more little smirkable, I think, like, haha jokes. It's not as dry as the last movie was. But also there's not a whole lot of action, like a lot of big action. This is, again, very, I guess, minute. It's very much about like showing the mutants using their abilities just in situations to do things, not so much big spectacle, big battles or something. Like they once again, we don't fight Magneto. He runs off basically. Strikers are human, so there's only so much we can get away with that. But there's good action overall. We got the attack on the X-Mansion, or we see a couple of other powers and stuff, a couple of little cameos here and there. Jubilee in the movie again, although she gets captured. Go figure. The one mutant with the lamest ability that is basically fireworks got captured. But we see Colossus for a little bit. That's kind of cool. There's also a reference to Gambit. Remy LeBeau is on the computer screen. The Maximoffs are also on that computer screen. Long before I knew who the Maximoffs were even connected to back when I first saw this. But I really like X-Men 2. I think it's loads better than the first movie. Like I said, the action's great, and the music, the score's good. There's better lines. There's just a lot more memorable lines here. Things that like Hugh Jackman says, Patrick Stewart says. There's all these great moments and sequences, and that's another thing. There's like really great sequences. You got like the opening stuff where Nightcrawler attacks the White House. That's a really cool sequence, the way they do the teleportation stuff. Then there's like the fight, like I said, at the X-Mansion, which is really cool with the cameos, and then, you know, Wolverine doing his Wolverine thing, which is cool. A nice little connection to Deadpool and Wolverine with the NSYNC song in the car, which everyone was real quick to point out after that movie came out. I don't think that was intentional in Deadpool to particularly call back to that, but it's kind of funny in hindsight that it came back, and 2 of the guys in the car were in that movie. But it's just overall a lot better. It's the focus is better because it's not just an evil mutant trying to, you know, destroy humanity. It's a guy. This time, it's sort of the other half of the equation, the human aspect. Usually, we would get something like Bolivar Trask and the Sentinels and things of that nature, but because we can't really go down that avenue, Stryker is probably the best idea. And his whole plan of like utilizing Cerebro and tricking Xavier, it's a pretty good plan, and he's an easy villain to hate. And like I said, Brian Cox is on fire as him, and everybody gets like better moments. I think, like I said, the cast was really great, but it's a good cast here. Alan Cumming's really good as Nightcrawler too. It's a shame he didn't stick around longer. It's just, I know he had a lot of issues with the makeup because apparently it was a lot of time in the chair, and considering what they were probably going to give him in the next movie, it was probably going to be like maybe 10-15 minutes of screen time, and that's just not worth it to sit in a chair for that long. Thankfully, he's in Doomsday, and he probably isn't being dolled up with all that makeup. He's probably using the motion capture suits, so he's probably having a lot of fun with that. He's also giving out a lot of spoilers. He already said he had a scene where he fought Reed Richards, so we know there's something going on there at least. But he's really great. Like I said, Kelly Hu kind of gets wasted. Mystique gets a little more. Ian McKellen's eating it up now as Magneto. This is like post Lord of the Rings fame now, so it's like he's on fire. Patrick Stewart, the King, even though he's barely doing anything in this movie too, really, because he's just sort of been kidnapped for most of it. But that's another cool thing, because I get why they kidnap him. You know, you need to sideline him because he's just too powerful and he just has too many options of what he can do. So you kind of have to strip him down, just like Magneto can't be the villain 24/7 because it's just too much what he can get away with. But it definitely felt like the middle chapter of something that was going to lead to something cool in 3, and that's why I'm going to have a lot more to talk about when we get to 3, because this one really felt like a nice setup movie for something really cool, like to keep talking about this war that's coming, this like choosing sides and stuff and getting everybody ready. And this one really felt like it was ending in a spot where like the next movie was going to do something with that. And of course, Jean's resurrection as the Phoenix in some way. But we'll talk about where everything kind of went south when we get to that. But it was just so good, and compared to the first movie, I think it's so much stronger. You know, like I said, the music, the score, John Ottman's score is just chef's kiss. Like, the new theme is amazing. He knows when to like hammer it in. It's memorable. It sticks with you. There's a reason why they kept using that theme in basically all the future movies whenever there was like a title theme or like an X-Men cool moment. And even the next movie, which is I think John Powell takes over for the next movie, but even he does a pretty good job of emulating that style a little bit more too. And his score is memorable as well, I think. So, but again, that's for part 3. We'll get to when we get there. But I really enjoyed this movie. I guess some slight negatives, I guess, would be the Bobby Rogue Pyro bit doesn't quite go anywhere. Like, Rogue really has nothing to do. Her biggest problem now is she wants to kiss Bobby and she can't, and they're just sort of working on it. And then Bobby kind of just gets the parents can't accept him for being a mutant. It's basically and so it's a nice way to kind of lean back on those sort of prejudices that the X-Men face, even from their own parents, which is cool. And I guess that's kind of the one iffy bit. Even Pyro, like, he's supposed to be presented as like this evil, like, bad boy up and coming, and that he's joining the dark side, or that he's going to join Magneto, which he does by the end, but like nothing really happens with it. And again, this was more of like a tease for something later, like, okay, he joined Magneto, so that means next time he's going to be on Magneto's team, which definitely needed some help. I mean, because like I said, it's just him and Mystique for most of this movie. Anything else that I thought was really bad, or anything that I thought was particularly icky? Nothing really. I think there's a lot of cool moments. Like I said, the X-Men attack. Storm gets a lot better moments this time. It's not just lightning. She gets to make some tornadoes. She does this cool thing with like the snow. She freezes out Jason in the illusion thing, which is cool. Nightcrawler, like I said, he does a lot of cool stuff. Bobby doesn't really do anything with the Iceman powers other than make a wall. They were saving anything really cool for him for the next one. And even then, they don't quite go as far as they probably should have with it, but I think they could have done more. But like I said, it's just an overall tighter movie. Even like I said, even though Cyclops gets wasted a little bit, and it's a shame, because especially when you consider what happened to him in the next movie, in hindsight it seems even worse. But overall, I think it's really good. Like, really good. If you didn't really like X-Men 1, you definitely should just check out X-Men 2. I think even if you didn't watch the first movie, you could just jump into this, because like I said, I barely had seen X-Men 1 when I saw X2, and I loved X2. Like, I thought X2 was amazing. Like, I remember seeing it in the theater with my father, and just thinking it was the coolest thing. And you gotta remember, at this point, I'm only really hype about Spider-Man. So when another group of heroes can really get me excited, this is definitely a positive for me. But like I said, X-Men's a tough one, because it's not as easy as like a Spider-Man movie or Blade or something like that, or Daredevil, because it's not just one guy. You know, it's not one person. It's an ensemble movie, and it's more difficult than you think to balance that many characters. And it's not even like an early Avenger, like looking ahead to like things like Avengers, which will have multiple characters running around. That had the benefit of, you know, other movies tying into these things and leading up to it. You know, X-Men has to go kind of blank slate. You know, we have to establish who these characters are and what they do, and there just isn't time to show everybody, and so you have to focus on a select few. And obviously the focus on this is Wolverine and his origin, which does get explained a little more, and it was kind of, and the thing that was always funny about this was that the only thing they really hinted at in X2 about Wolverine's tragic backstory was that he had a history with Stryker, he did some messed up things, but by the end of the movie, Wolverine doesn't care anymore about what happened, and he's free of it. And in the next movie, he doesn't even talk about his origin story. And so I don't know why everyone had such like a questionable like hard on about trying to like determine Wolverine's past, like how he got the adamantium. It's like, we saw it, like we see the flashback. Stryker put the claws in it thing. Yes, he agreed for the procedure. Okay, what else do you need to say? And I don't know why they kept dragging down that avenue, but that's, you know, that's for later to talk about, you know. But for what this movie is, it's solid, you know, and I think it's really, really good compared to the first movie. It's just a lot stronger. It's well put together compared, and not that the first movie wasn't well put together, but it just feels, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's hard to put into words like what exactly is right about this movie. It doesn't let go, if that makes sense. Like in X-Men 1, there's a lot of like lulls and highs. You know, there's talking scenes, and then we get like a little bit of action, mutant action, and then we kind of talk again. And there's a lot of setups and stuff, and there's a lot of back and forth. But here it's like, okay, X-Men mansion fight. Okay, boom. And then Cyclops and Professor X are kidnapped. And then there's, you know, Professor X being stuck in the illusion thing, trying to get out of it. And then there's Storm and Jean trying to get Nightcrawler, and then they're fighting off the jet in the sky, getting with the tornadoes and stuff. And then they got to rescue Wolverine and the guys from the cops when the family calls the cops on them and they have to fight off the police, and then the whole thing at the dam, just one big action scene, especially compared to like the ending in the first movie, which was just, okay, let's all let Hugh Jackman do everything. This one felt more like, okay, everybody has something to do. Everything's cool. And the idea of them teaming up with Magneto was really cool. I don't think the game had come out yet, but X-Men Legends 2, which did the whole team up with Magneto thing, it's not an unheard of thing. It happens a lot in the comics. It usually happens when there's like a bigger villain, like Apocalypse or Mr. Sinister or something. Usually that's when Magneto will help out. But lo and behold, we're never really getting any other villain aside from Magneto. Stryker is basically the B villain we're always going to get if Magneto is unavailable for most of these films, mind you. So overall, I'd say, if you liked the first X-Men movie, obviously, check this out. If you didn't like the first X-Men movie, I'd still give this one a shot because I think you'll find that this one's better, like a lot better than X-Men 1. And it's just you have to temper your expectations for what's to come if you haven't happened to see the next movie. In hindsight, watching X-Men 2 kind of makes me sad a little bit, melancholy, because I know what happens next, and I know how it all kind of doesn't live up to the expectations, but it wouldn't be the first Marvel trilogy that didn't quite stick the landing due to unforeseen studio issues that just get into this and make a mess. So, that's basically it for this short note. When the movies are good, it's not going to be very long. I can't really sing praises that much, but it's a solid movie, and you definitely should check it out. So, thanks for listening, and I will see you guys on the next one.